Surprisingly, many of the top Tesla news stories that came out this weekend all come together nicely to show you what's exactly happening for electric vehicle sales and how the new technologies are now killing the old legacy auto empire. First, the latest statistics show that globally, electric vehicle sales are actually on track to grow strongly again this year, reaching 17 million sales. Second, Ford's inventory for their F-150 truck has surged to an alarming 135 days. Are they going to survive? Third, this comes as Tesla now no longer needs a reservation to order new Cybertruck Foundation series. Fourth, the latest version of Tesla's full self-driving is now being made available beyond the early access group. And finally, a new report is showing that public electric vehicle chargers are set to surpass gas stations in 8 years. Got Jeff Lutz with us. Jeff is an ex-Supply Chain C-Level Executive at several Fortune 100 companies like Google, Lenovo, and Motorola. He's currently running his own consulting firm. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, Herbert. There's a lot of important news coming out just literally over the last day or two. It's pretty compelling. Can't wait to go through it.
And you've got some news that you just broke this morning that's very important to really understand what's going on with auto. And all these signs are coming together. We're going to share with you the new stats to show, is it about time that these some of these autos, legacy autos, is going to start feeling the pain. So let's start with this one, which is, there's a fallacy. People think that electric vehicle sales are not growing, but that's not true. Here's a statistics here that says that globally, EV sales are on track to grow strongly again this year, reaching about 17 million vehicles sold. More than 1 in 5 cars sold worldwide in 2024 is going to be electric. It's happening. Here's the table. The orange is China. The light blue is Europe. The green is United States. And the white is rest of the world. And I think, if you look at this, my quick look at it is China's the one that's growing the most. Maybe the blue, Europe is kind of flat. And then the green is also kind of flat, which is the United States. What's your thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, this is definitely varying by region. But China is really, from a government perspective, they're really strongly both enforcing and driving EV adoption, as well as almost, kind of going against the purchase of a conventional ICE vehicle. Second thing, and this is really important in terms of what's happening in the US. Remember, in the US, non-Tesla, probably non-Rivian, but non-Tesla, they ship from their factories. Think about GM or Ford. They ship from their factories into something called a dealer network wholesale, and they get credit for that. So when it goes from the factory to the dealer, that's counted as a sale. Now, what's happened over the last year, and if you've listened to us talk on this channel, we've told you that it started at the end of last year. The non-Tesla EV inventory has grown. So that means cars going from car factories, legacy auto car factories, into the dealer network has grown. So what happens in that situation is these dealers are saying, look, I don't have any more room. This is a big problem. I'm not turning inventory. There's all kinds of stats around this. So what do they say? They put their hand up and say, no more. So, and you've heard the legacy automakers, Ford, GM, say, hey, we're not going to install the capacity we promised this year, nor are we going to ship the number of EV vehicles that we promised this year. So in that situation, what's happening now is they're heavily discounting. You've seen Elon comment on this a few times on X. They are heavily discounting these legacy EVs, and that's it's actually causing a bit of a problem right now, I would say, for Tesla in some situations. But in general, if you look at that chart again, the reason the U.S. is stagnant is because the channel is full, and they've got to get rid of that product in channel. That product in channel going from the channel to consumers doesn't increase the size of that bar. In the U.S., what increases the size of that bar is a shipment from an auto factory into the dealer network with inventory. EV inventories up near 150 days, I believe, which is about 3 times what they normally want. So therefore, they're going to slow down shipping into the channel, and that's why you see that U.S. bar is stagnant. And also, then the product going from the channel to consumers is heavily discounted. So that takes, and that causes some issues as well. But I just wanted to explain a little bit of what's happening. EV growth is happening, especially when it's got decent or relatively decent incentives. It's happening, and as long as that total bar continues to grow over 20-25% and continues its growth, it's going to reach this point of escape velocity where more and more of the installed capacity is going towards the growth in EV, and therefore the costs are going to come down, and then the existing fixed cost pressures in ICE are going to grow, and they're going to actually put downward pressure on margins, upward pressure on COGS, and that's the situation as I see it right now.
Nice. Thank you for explaining that. In China, we just reported last week that they've hit a critical milestone, 51% now. Over 50% of all new cars sold are electric vehicles. They don't have the same problems in the US have, where there's legacy auto gas cars still being sold, or, the struggle. So this is going to change. But here's really big information that you broke earlier this morning, just literally a few minutes ago. You showed that auto credit availability has declined for the fourth consecutive month in July. If you don't consider COVID, this is now a 10-year low of people being able to get loans to buy their cars, and near COVID levels. So this is the report from Cox Automotive. Auto credit availability declines for fourth consecutive month in July. Here's a beautiful table here, 92.9 now. And look how this is just crashing and burning. And the reason why is tightening credit across all sales channels, credit decline across all lender types, increased yield spread, and decreased approval rates. So is this
I'll break it
tsunami?
down. Yeah. This is the leading indicator to why we're going to talk a bit again about inventory buildup, because it's really important. What inventory levels are a really healthy indicator of how a business is doing, not only how the supply chain is doing, but how the overall business is doing. So if you look at that chart, the prior trough in that chart was COVID. So there was concerns about, lending money at the time, and the government had to step in and really open up, so credits, to open up credit spreads and improve the credit situation. So that prior trough was COVID. So we're basically down near where we were when there was a once in 100 year pandemic. And if you take COVID out, I mean, we're much lower than we've been over the last 10 years. So this is about auto loan access. And so one of the leading indicators is when credit tightens up is when, it becomes a real issue for the economy. And this is going to be one of the drivers, I believe, for the Fed to step in. Their first mandate is around inflation and getting inflation to target near 2%. The other mandate is around keeping employment. Their unemployment target is 4%. We're already at 4.3%. But the thing that would make the Fed jump in, within a day and do a cut, or would really put them over the edge to do this cut in September, is going to be around credit tightening. And the auto loan market is a big portion of our economy. The fact that we're at a 4-month, consecutive decline, June was restated lower. And the other thing that's happening is if you go to I think the fourth clip, what's happening are the dynamics is the auto loan rates relative to what's happening with the bond yields. As those spread apart, basically people are looking at, what they can get for their money. And they're like, well, why would I buy a car at these loan rates when, this is going on in the bond market? And that spread is also something that a lot of experts look at. So what all this means is the ability for people to get loans has tightened dramatically, and it's continuing to tighten. I'll pull some additional data and send it out in a bit. The New York Fed actually tracks a rejection rate for loans, and we'll share that out in a bit as well. So I shared this out this morning to subscribers because this is a leading indicator to what's happening in the auto market. And when we get into the inventory discussion, which we introduced last week, and we're going to stay on top of this one because it's really important, and it's an imminent leading indicator. I believe many auto companies are going to start removing or reducing shifts and doing plant slowdowns, and then from shift reductions and plant slowdowns, then they go to putting employees on furloughs, layoffs, and actually shutting full facilities down. Again, unless this ship gets righted, this is what's going to happen. But if you look at what's happening in the credit market, there's no reason for that ship to be, until credit improves, there's no reason for that to happen. So there's a big issue, I think, pending here in the global auto market. It's also leading to why Tesla is doing what they're doing with loan rates, which has really helped drive store activity from what we're seeing.
All right, so it's like everything coming together finally. We've been waiting for it. Here it is. You've got electric vehicle sales continue to rise. You got auto credit completely just crashing. Now we got inventory showing up because they were stuffing. They were stuffing the dealers. Here you've got Ford's inventory for the F-150. The days of supply has reached an alarming 135 days. That's half the year, right, or whatever. 80, and then the Cybertruck's coming soon. And then if you combine that with the Tesla Model Y and Ford Escape and Edge sales, Ford is stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? They want to buy the better electric vehicles. You got the Cybertruck, Ford 150 showing up. Is Ford going to survive? This is the table of Ford's inventory levels. This is crazy. This is like 150. You've been comparing it to Tesla's 19 days of supply. What do you think? Is Ford going to survive?
Yeah. Tesla's at 18, and remember, there's no the actual construction of the network from the factory to the consumer has an entire node removed, which is the dealer network. So Tesla's 18 days. The 135 days you see here is literally dealer network to consumer. It doesn't include the balance sheet inventory that the factory has, but inside of the four walls of the factory and in transit leaving the factory until the dealer takes possession of it. So this is actually, I would say kind of a conservative view of what the total inventory is. I looked at Toyota, for example. We'll get to this Ford data in a minute. Here's a quick set of stats. In the last quarter, and by the way, Toyota, besides Tesla, Toyota is the best at turning their inventory. They have about 27 to 30 days of inventory in channel. But if you look at their sales, they do about 75 to 78 billion in sales in a quarter. That's 3 times what Tesla is doing, Toyota is doing. So that's great. But if you look at their inventory, and I've looked at it this is called the balance sheet inventory, not the dealer network inventory. What's in the factory is basically piece parts, fully built up vehicles, and that inventory is what's in this number. And they have about, I want to say, $34.6 billion in that balance sheet inventory. So think about it: 75 to 78 billion in sales, 34 billion in inventory. That's about 40% of their sales is sitting in inventory in the factory. Now you'd say, like, okay, they're pretty good at turning in the dealer network. Is this a problem? I would say that's a fairly high number to be at. And that 34 billion, that's grown about 20% consecutively over the last 4 quarters. So they used to be at around, call it 28 billion in call it their balance sheet inventory. Now, what does this mean? Why are you giving me all these numbers? You're confusing me. Tesla has $3.1 billion in balance sheet inventory to deliver 25.5 billion in sales in the same quarter. So that's about 13% of their sales is sitting in their balance sheet inventory. Toyota's up at 40%, normally regarded as one of the best supply chains in auto and the best overall businesses. They're carrying a lot of inventory. That's the point. Tesla, 13% of inventory, balance sheet inventory, to the 25.5 billion in sales. Toyota's up at around 40% to deliver their 75 billion in sales. So besides the days of inventory discussion, these companies are also seeing a buildup in their balance sheet inventory, which is a big deal. So if you go back to this chart, Herbert, this is not only trucks. If we go back to the Ford chart really quickly, and appreciate Yaman sharing this. This is not only a Cybertruck comparison to the F-150, which is their best-selling vehicle. This is also other vehicles like the Escape, the Bronco Sport, and so forth. So the precursor to this is the tightening credit, and Elon's been talking about this. Tesla's been talking about this. This is why they're going for these lower rates. By the way, these companies, they all have deals on rates as well, but their inventory is building up. And what usually happens after this is heavy discounting in channel to reduce inventories. Gross margins go down. Factories have to slow down or shut down, as I said, and that puts pressure on fixed costs, and that puts pressure on the next quarter's gross margin. So this could turn into a spiral if they don't get it under control very quickly. And this may be one of the reasons, again, for the Fed to intervene. Now, if we go to this overall chart, I think it's important to reiterate this. We shared this late last week, but there's 5 lines on the left chart. It's almost like the auto industry's, I don't know if they're trying to hide this, but the title of the slide makes no sense. The actual buy line there, the new supply is 46 days higher year on year. Like that should be to me in red flaming text, because that's basically your inventory doubling year on year. And so we went from a year of healthy inventories to this is very unhealthy. This is 100 days of inventory for the US auto market. There's 100 days. They have a full quarter plus another half month of inventory. So that's what that means. And the only time this spiked briefly higher was back in COVID in 2020, but that was obviously an anomaly. And then you had the 2019 level where it spiked. And by the way, that was kind of relieved by COVID, the factory shutting down and so forth. And then they had all the supply disconnects. So that helped them actually burn through their inventory. So now you've got this new peak growing. Some people say, okay, we had this CDK issue, which was the channel, software issue that was hacked. And that caused the spike in June, but it really didn't come down precipitously in July. So we have to watch this number. If it goes from 100 back to 80, then maybe it's getting healthier again. But if it stays around 95 or 100, it can't stay this high for too long. You're going to run into serious issues. Stellantis last week already announced plant slowdowns and closures, and they're on the far end of this, by the way. If the whole U.S. auto is at 100, they're well north of 120, 130, 140. Stellantis is at the worst of this. So this inventory is a leading indicator of a kind of a more of an auto slowdown. And you say, okay, so what happens for Tesla? Well, again, Tesla with their shorter supply network, they entered into the slowdown earlier. You heard Elon talking about it. And when you have 18 days of supply, you're basically turning that supply over much quicker. And if you have to take your pricing down, you don't have to do a bunch of, tremendous discounting with a lot of product in channel. So they're going to enter in and they're going to escape the slowdown faster. Final point is if you look at the around 15.7 million, which is the US SAR, which is basically the measurement of it's a rolling prediction of what the total auto sales should be for a year. The 15.7, ICE and hybrid are flat to negative in that 15.7. Actually, they're net negative in that 15.7 million prediction. EV is up. So while EV growth has slowed down, it is still growing year on year in the US, and ICE plus hybrid is at a negative.
Gotcha. Okay. This is all happening for Ford. Of course, the F-150, you saw the inventory, but Cybertruck. So there's a lot of confusion about the Cybertruck. You can explain it to us what actually is happening. But what they did was Tesla now made it so that anybody can buy a Cybertruck now. You don't need a reservation. You can buy a Cybertruck Foundation Series. You can just order it directly from the website. So this is it. It's out there. And of course, people are going electric, release this. And anyone with 100,000 can get a Cybertruck now, despite Tesla's 1 million reservations. So he's being very negative about it, basically saying that must mean that there's, crash and burn for Cybertruck. And now they're trying to sell like crazy. Here's one from Fox Business. Tesla halts orders for 61,000 Cybertruck. Cheapest version is now $100,000. So in 2019, they had planned for a cheaper version of the Cybertruck to cost about $40,000. And of course, they're saying that that's all no longer the case. You can only buy it for $100,000. And then now they've made it open. You've obviously said this is FUD. This is false, both electric and Fox Business. And then you explained why that is. This 1 million reservations at $100,000. That's what they're saying is there's 1 million reservations. How come you can't sell more than what they've done now?
Yeah. I mean, these articles are FUD, but we don't have to go into zero emotion about it. We just have to go through the data, and the data will lead you to a logical conclusion. So if we go to the next point I raise, this is really about the U.S. auto market. So again, the title leads you to believe that there's 1 million or plus reservations. Why can't they sell them? Well, if you look at the total U.S. auto market, remember I told you 15 or so million units. 2% of that market, so 300,000 units, are cars that have an MSRP greater than $100,000, and only a third of those, so the 300K goes down to 100,000 cars are trucks. So every year in the U.S., 100,000 trucks that are greater than $100,000 in MSRP are sold. Let's take the macro to the side that we have highest interest rates in decades. Let's take the auto credit slowdown information that we just showed you. Let's put that all to the side and just say historically, 100,000 trucks are sold in a year. So why would Tesla sell anywhere near 1 million reservations or have the ability to burn through those in a single year when that's the size of the market? And by the way, Tesla wisely sized their capacity and their production velocity to not do that. They're sizing their production so that they minimize losses in the beginning. That's why they're selling the highest variants first. And once they get to that point of equilibrium where their contribution margin zero, so they can actually afford their fixed cost, then they're going to bring on the other versions and scale. So if we go to the second point, and by the way, this is how basic product management, supply management, manufacturing management works. So here's the other point they could have put in the article. If Tesla does around 50, let's say they do around 50,000 Cybertrucks this year, that would be half that would be half the luxury truck market in a year. In their first year of production, in their first introduction, they would already be the number one selling EV, but they would actually have half the total truck market, greater ICE, everything, hybrid, everything, greater than $100,000 MSRP, and they're still ramping. And then, as we talked about this 135 days of supply, on the Ford, it's just like that one's going in the other direction. And it may have been important context for the article.
That's why they're doing the article. Very nice. I'm glad that you put this together because, you understand that these are the numbers you shared, right? Data points. I mean, Tesla's first year out for the Cybertruck, they need to sell the high version. They need to grow scale. They need to work out their factories to start bringing it down, increasing their margins. And then next year, they'll start selling it at the lower price point. They'll sell more and more volume, just like typical growth ramp.
Yeah, and let me just, there's a third point there too, but let me just in 30 seconds or less briefly explain. Like people are like, well, why can't they make more Cybertrucks? What's the problem? There isn't a problem. They're going up a ramp curve, and each of these unique components have to go up a ramp curve where they focus on what's the target process time at peak velocity, what is the target yield, so how many parts come in and how many good parts come out of the process. And when you multiply those two, you have the process time, you have the yield, and of course then you have the complexity involved of like what's involved in the actual operations to make it. They work on those three things and they optimize those things to get to a terminal target. Once it's at that terminal target, that part's at its cost target, and now multiply that effort by every unique component in the bill of material, whether it's done in the Tesla factory or whether it's done by a supplier. And that's what they're going through right now. Cars that have many, many new technologies, many, many new part types, this process takes longer. So it's not a question of why can't Tesla buy enough parts, or they have enough batteries, why can't they make more Cybertrucks? Is they want to do this at a rate so that they're minimizing their losses as they scale each of those parts to their velocity target, their minimized process time target, and their yield target. And as they do that, then they actually fall in line with the cost target, and they want to build as many Cybertrucks over the lifetime at the lowest cost structure as possible. So this is the push-pull that they're working through. And I think it's important, for folks to have that context. And remember, we're in year one of production, and they've already passed the sellout rate of the electric F-150 and the Rivian R1T. And that's just a path along the way, but they're just going to keep going.
You were pointing this out, a year ago. You were saying that why are you comparing first year Cybertruck to third year, fourth year?
Second, right.
Yeah, you can't do that. Okay, so this is the article. The article talks about, hey, Tesla selling a $100,000 dual motor variant Foundation series. The 120,000, it's a range will be available starting October. And then Guidehouse Insights, Sam Abu-Samid said that shows that demand for Tesla Cybertruck is a lot less than 1 million trucks. They're sitting on a lot of inventory, 2-motor, 3-motor trucks. And then you pointed out Reuters contributed this report. You said, how do they know? How do they know the inventory?
They don't. I mean, so first off, the important context is Tesla left the quarter that they're building Cybertrucks with 18 total days of inventory. Yeah. And I just told you about the balance sheet inventory, which is about 13% of sales, which is the lowest I've seen in the industry of anybody. So Tesla has the opposite of an inventory problem at this point. And there's no data available on the Cybertruck that there is an inventory problem. Just because a drone goes up and we get imagery of like, okay, this is this day's production in the factory, doesn't mean that there's an actual channel inventory problem. You want to look at the number of days of supply relative to the sellout rate, and there's no indication that there's an issue. Tesla's going through the logical phases of where it was highly constrained in the beginning. It's going to be less constrained at some point, and then the constraints are going to come off, and we're just watching that happen in real time. But unless you ran a sensitivity analysis and really understood, like, what would the sellout rate be at 120K, 110K, 100, and so forth, unless you have that, unless you have some other relative data points that could support that, I don't know how you can say that A, there's an inventory problem, or B, there's any kind of sales problem without understanding the sensitivity analysis of what they can sell at each level.
I like what you said in your post. You should correct the article, or properly state sources and data behind your assertions. Thank you.
This is the Fox Business article. Yeah.
Okay. Correct. So more information here. Tesla released full self-driving 12.5.1.3, now going to the first 0.5%, but this is going beyond the early access group, mostly Model Y customers initially. And then, so this is it. You can see that it's being released now wider.
I have this downloading to my X right now. Looking forward to it.
Elon said, Omar asked Elon, hey, what about the hardware 3 or AI 3 customers? When are they going to be able to get the 12.5 series? And he said, team's working on it. This will be a different release number. Everybody's making fun of them with the 12. Stop it. Just the 12.5.1 or 2. That's good enough. Okay, next, the final story here is there's more data now that's showing that electric vehicle charging stations is going to be more than gas stations in 8 years. And then, of course, if you count the home chargers and all the other destination chargers, it's already more than gas stations. But, pound for pound, this is what you're getting. So this is coming from, where is this coming from? Where did this data come from? Anyways, U.S. added 700 new public fast charging stations for electric cars in the second quarter, bringing the nationwide total to 9,000. And then in addition to that data, there's also new data as well that California, looking at California's gas sales, they fell below 2000 level. Why? Telecommuting and rising EV sales. You can see this table here from the state of California. This is the gasoline sales. It's fallen now to here. So yeah, this is it. This is what's happening. I mean, things are all moving forward quite nicely for electric vehicles, it looks like.
Yeah, this is what happens as an industry scales, and you have an incumbent and then you have an entrant. And in what you see, you'll start seeing these trends occur, and over time, the entrant really reaches some form of escape velocity where they can outrun their fixed costs and they can start being truly accretive. The U.S. has been behind, and again, to give a private version of building chargers and then the public government piece of it. And I really think this should be more of a partnership where the government bids this out, and there's a fair bidding process where a company like Tesla would win a lot of this. And you leverage, if you're the government, you leverage the supply chain of a proven high ROIC, return on invested capital partner like Tesla, and then you accelerate the process of building these out using government money. So we've seen some kind of missteps in the beginning. There's a lot of people talking about, 8 government chargers built with $9 billion in investment over the last 2 or 3 years really puts a bit of a black eye on things. But I think this works better as kind of a public-private partnership piece of it, and really incentivizing those that have been proven, to ramp these things up. That's the direction we want to go to. And eventually, if you look at the home charging plus public, I mean, this is really, it really changes the game. And if you're not an EV owner, it just, and you have the ability, and you have a home with a garage, or you have a carport or some ability to be able to charge at home, it actually changes your life in terms of like what you're doing, and worry about going to gas stations and various weather conditions and so forth. It's just, I found it to be a much better experience if your apartment, home, condo, complex, whatever allows it. It's a much better experience.
And a couple more tables here from the U.S. Department of Energy. If you look at the map of the U.S., anything that's bright green, that's over 246 fast charging stations. It's primarily the coast that has these. You can see where they're adding new ones, but it's going to add up soon. So charging anxiety remains one of the top reservations for drivers hesitant to buy an EV. And this guy says, who's Houston? Houston is Union of Concerned Scientists, says that you have a few anecdotes that suggest a lack of charging, and that gets conflated to charging overall. It's important to make sure people are aware of how quickly these stations are coming online. So soon, this won't be an issue anymore. Obviously, it's kind of probably still at the bubble right now, but it's how fast they can do it. And like you said, it's not just going to be Tesla that's going to do it. All the car companies are going to do it now because they've all committed to the same standard. And then you're going to get hotels, restaurants, the government. They're all going to start doing it because the trend is clear. This is where we're headed. So awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks,
appreciate it. Follow Jeff on X at the Jeff Lutz. Subscribe to his X account. You get that information, and he breaks it down really quickly. He's one of the best accounts to follow. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.